Hello and welcome to the Saturday Morning Patriot Pulpit Podcast. I'm Ryan Sharp, your bold, fearless leader for the next little while or until you get overwhelmed with real facts and decide to throw on some pointless show like Sex and the City. Okay, let's jump right in. So many of you may or may not know, because the news will not report these things that you really should know, that around the country, legislatures have been passing red flag laws, as well as the federal government. Many have already done so in the darkness of night. So here in Florida, we already have this brought to you by none other than the wolves in sheep's clothing, none other than the Republicans who control this state but act like Democrats. What these laws do is allow some leftist judge to rule that anyone who they think is mentally handicapped or basically should not have a gun to have a gun. Police show up to your house and steal your guns, and there's nothing you can do. So now the states are going after the federal government to prevent them from doing what the state is already doing. Let me repeat that. The states are going after the federal government to prevent them, the feds, from doing what they, the state, is already doing. In other words, the states are going to pull the speck out of the feds' eye, but leave the plank in their own eye, to put it in biblical terms. The Texas legislature has filed a bill to supposedly stop federal red flag laws from affecting their state. So, this is Texas House Bill 36. It's called Prohibition on Recognition and Enforcement of Extreme Risk Protective Order. Sounds important. What is an extreme risk protective order? It says it means a written order, warrant, or executive order issued or signed by a magistrate or other court official that has the primary purpose of reducing the risk of death or injury related to a firearm by one, owning or receiving a firearm; two, requiring a person to surrender a firearm or otherwise remove fire from a person; and B, is not the basis of constituting an offense against the person who is in the subject order, blah, blah. So, moving on down here, the state of Texas, including an agency, department, commission, board, office, council, court, or other entity that is in any branch of the state government that is created by the Constitution or statute of the state, including a university system or a system of higher education. That's a whole other topic. That shouldn't be there anyway. Then you go on to define who constitutes state government. So we got to go through all that hogwash. And I'm still going through all that hogwash. A statute, order, rule, or regulation purporting to implement or enforce an extreme risk protective order against a person in this state that infringes on the person's right to due process, keeping and bearing arms, or free speech protected by the United States Constitution or the Texas Constitution is unenforceable as against the public policy of the state and shall have no effect. Now, that's the crux of this law, okay? The Texas legislature is basically saying, we want to keep the feds out. Now, somewhere in that provision they're making, they somehow forget to mention the fact that there are other people, such as Austin and such as Dallas, and other officials, other judges, other state officials that are violating the Second Amendment as well, and yet they don't seem to. Now, in Missouri, my home state, where I was born, the Cardinals, they're proposing the Second Amendment Preservation Act, House Bill 1637. Let me read what this baby does here. All right, it is called the Second Amendment Preservation Act, okay? And one is to enact in lieu thereof and repeal section 1.320 of the statutes to enact in lieu thereof 9 new sections relating to the sole purpose of adding additional protections to the right to bear arms. Sounds good, but we need to know what that section is they're going to repeal here, supposedly. So let's read that. Now that particular statute, 1.320, which is called the Promotion of Responsible Gun Ownership, which reads, the General Assembly of the State of Missouri strongly promotes responsible gun ownership, including parental supervision of minors and the proper use, storage, and ownership of all firearms. Blah, 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 blah. Sounds great. Now here's what's interesting. the act that they're proposing actually removes that and then puts it right back in, word for word, in the same bill. So why remove it in the first place? This is called remove and replace. Sounds like some phony proposals of Trump and the GOP. Let's remove and replace instead of simply remove Obamacare. Let's, remove and replace. That's what this sounds like. Anyway, that statute would be replaced by 9 sections, and I'll spare you all the numbers, but these new sections are to be known as the Second Amendment Preservation Act. Now, folks, the Second Amendment is clear. It doesn't really need other acts or laws to make it any more clear. But somehow in all these acts, they like to strip the clear words of the Constitution and redefine it with strings attached. So, apologize for the noise in the background. So pay attention here. In reading this, it sounds wonderful, like a dream come true. Let me go ahead and read these other sections, at least some of them. I'm not going to bore you with all of them, but it says Missouri is firmly resolved to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Really? Okay, I'll go with that here. I don't think you're resolved to do any of it, but anyway. Against every aggression, whether foreign or domestic, and his duty to oppose every infraction of the principles. Really? Is that why you allow the butcher of millions of babies in your state? Is that why that you allow something that violates the will of the people, 71% of the people, gay marriage? Is that why you allow that to be so-called the law of the land when it's not the law of the land? Anyway, so supposedly they say they oppose infraction of those principles that constitute the basis of the Union of the states, because only a faithful observance of those principles can secure the Union's existence. They're right about that. They don't really care, but anyway. Number 2, acting the Constitution of the United States, the people of several states created the federal government to be their agent in the exercise of a few defined powers, while reserving state governments the power to legislate concerning the lives, liberty, and property of citizens in the ordinary course of affairs. The limitation of the federal government's power is affirmed under 10, that's right, of the Constitution of the United States, which defines the total scope of federal powers as being that which has been delegated by the people of the several states to the federal government. That's all great. And all powers not delegated to the federal government in the Constitution of the United States is reserved to the states respectively or the people themselves. Now, they kind of muss up the language there a little bit, but overall, that's great. That's true. That's all good stuff. Wonderful. And I could read on. There's 4 more sections here. Literally, if I read it all, that would wrap up the show. So I'm not going to bore you with that, but everything sounds absolutely perky and wonderful. And then you get down here to number 8. I want you to pay attention here. And again, in reading all that, it sounds wonderful, like a dream come true, until you realize who's proposing it. The weak, compromising, spineless jellyfish aquarium we call the legislature. Okay, so catch your breath for a second, because there's a lot here, and since I'm not one to subjugate hard facts or law proposals, I must therefore spare you from reading all of these sections. Anyway, just kidding. I suppose if I read every section, that would, bore you guys to tears, and I don't think anyone would sit through that. Any fan of the average American is like that fed on a double espresso. So bear with me. So again, everything's great, and then we get to this number 8 on line 56. Let me read that to you, if I can get the thing to pull up. All right. The people of Missouri have vested the General Assembly with the authority to regulate the manufacture, possession, exchange, and use of firearms within the borders of this state, subject only to the limits imposed by Amendment 2 of the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of Missouri. Now, let me read that again. The people of Missouri, that's my family, friends, have vested the legislature, which is the General Assembly, with the authority to regulate. Let's just skip the manufacture here. Let's look at it. With the authority to regulate possession, exchange, and use of firearms within the borders of the state. Really? when, when in the hell did the people of Missouri vest you with the authority to remove their firearms, with regulating possession of firearms? When did that happen, Missouri? When did that happen? I didn't do that. I didn't for sure that. So that's where this completely loses focus. It sounds great, but they get about these things. This thing. They do these best because most people won't read all the way through. They start with the wonderful thing. They start a thing that everybody wants to hear, and there's all that comes in there. So this is line 6, and there's almost always a but. It's the bills that the state they only take with the other. So we have a lot of convincing lip service. Again, I just made. And when did I or any other citizen Missouri ever the authority feel there's I didn't the authority of firearms? They set limits by amendment to the Constitution. But the two still not a logical fallacy because they create each other. The Second Amendment said our right to arms shall not be infringed, period. And yet they say the people who gave them the right to arms. They blame it on us. How friggin' arrogant can I be? Now they don't figure. So I can't they tell the federal government that they can't do all this stuff. They want it. Now, in the next section, they left for the initially real. I need it earlier, but it's just I tell you, this Republicans, boy, they know how to me, don't they? I think that's true. Now, throughout this bill, basically tells us to go to hell, and they not only do that, but they give them reasons why they should go there, which is awesome. That part of the bill is actually great. I don't have an issue with that. So let me read a few of these things here. And again, in Section 9, they had the exact same language that they supposedly removed, which it's not bad language, but anyway. So going on down, any tax, levy, fee, or stamp imposed on firearms, firearm accessories, or ammunition not common to other goods and services that might reasonably be expected to create a chilling effect on the purchase or ownership of those items by law-abiding citizens. Sounds great. That's sort of what they want to limit here. Any registering or trafficking of firearms, firearm accessories, ammunition that might reasonably be expected to create a chilling effect on the purchase or ownership of those items by law-abiding citizens. Sounds great. Any act forbidding the possession, ownership, or use or transfer of a firearm, firearm accessory, or ammunition by a law-abiding citizen. And they just keep listing all these wonderful things. But guess what? It only applies to the federal government. The following federal acts, laws, executive orders, administrative orders, court orders, rules, and regulations shall be considered infringements on the people's right to keep and bear arms. Well, to me, again, I don't give a damn who is infringing on it. It's a violation of the Second Amendment. So for them to say that they can do it, but the feds can, is completely hypocritical. And that's basically what this entire bill does. It goes through and it pays lip service to what people want to hear. Sounds amazing. But until you go back to that statement I read earlier, that somehow we, the people, gave the state authority over our gun rights. So what's this mean? The feds can do this crap, but the powerful state of Missouri can? I'm sorry, the feds can do crap, but the all-powerful state of Missouri can? Sounds like the old tired joke. The Democrats propose a bill to tear down the White House, and the Republicans respond with a bill to do it in 3 phases. No, I appreciate you, the state, telling the federal government to go to hell, but not if it means you are going to do the same damn thing to me and think I vested you with the authority. No, I didn't vest you with anything except the duty that you swore to God to do, and that is to defend my liberty, my life, my property, and my guns, not to regulate, control, steal, and pillage as you claim in the bill. So anyway, I'm not saying this bill is totally bad. It's not. And I think such bills are increasingly necessary given the judicial and federal tyranny we are facing, but none of it will matter anyway because none of the states, mainly led by Republicans, have shown any balls whatsoever to stand up to the feds or the courts. But it doesn't matter what their laws say. We the people made it very clear, for instance. Let me give you an example. Over a decade ago, the people of Missouri and in almost every state voted to define marriage as the union between one man and one woman. In the case of Missouri, 71% of the people said yes. That's what we want. We voted yes across this country as well, overwhelmingly. The people added it to their constitutions overwhelmingly. It's still there today. You can go read it. Although some states have illegally tried to remove it. But it doesn't matter because they don't enforce it. They have, in fact, violated it in almost every clause of their constitutions. Why? Because some wing communist on Russia's payroll said to. Literally. Now, the oath of office is very clear to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. But not one officer of government is fulfilling that oath because they're upholding and defending a Supreme Court decision or some other court decision which the Constitution emphatically declares cannot make law, cannot change laws. They simply are supposed to interpret the laws. But somehow, state after state, governor after governor, legislature after legislature has proven over and over again that they care what the law is. They don't care what their duty is. They don't care what the Constitution says. Most of them don't even know it anyway because I've talked to them on the phone. My question to the Missouri legislators, are you actually going to enforce this through the executive branch who actually has the authority to carry it out? Are you finally going to tell the courts that their unlawful, wicked, unconstitutional decisions, which you've allowed to act as laws, are no longer the law and are not binding? Because that's what you should do. Your oath of office, in fact, demands you do it. So people get all excited by these kind of bills, and they love to hear the hype and the lip service. The vice president was just praised by Christians for, oh, he's the first administration to show up for the National Prayer Breakfast, and he's a savior. Well, there's such thing as called lying. There's people that actually will tell you one thing and do the other. So while he's up there kissing the rear ends of a bunch of Christians, in the back room, Trump is sitting there funneling millions of dollars to Planned Parenthood and basically laughing at how naive and ignorant Christians are. He even said that in a speech. He's like, you guys are fools. So 100% of the time, basically, that's all these bills are. They're mere lip service to trick millions of people into blind allegiance, to convince hardworking, naive citizens to continue sending their money to them because, see, here's proof. We're trying to defend your liberty. Yeah, hogwash. Meanwhile, they're making deals in the back room to seal it. Now, I've seen it all my life, and I don't want to jump headlong into judicial supremacy because that is primarily what's destroying this country, and it deserves its own segment, which we probably will do a segment on that. But it all kind of goes back to that. So I sort of have a problem with this bill because it's more of the same. They put... for 16 straight years here in Florida, they put pro-life legislation on the books. Now, got to preface that, and we'll have a whole other segment on this, but those so-called pro-life bills are not pro-life in any way, shape, or form. They're actually pro-Nazi if you actually read them, because they guarantee the right to kill certain people based on a certain set of conditions that man makes up. Totally unconstitutional, but yet that's what... so-called pro-life Republicans have done for 40 years now. So that's basically what, and the bottom line is they allow these bills then to be challenged in the courts overturn them, nothing gets accomplished. Meanwhile, millions of dollars continue to stream in to the coffers because people think, they're trying to end abortion. No, they don't want to end abortion. In fact, I've talked to a representative in Florida that actually admitted to me that they make too much money through National Right to Life and do not want abortion to end. It's a true story. Anyway, they give with one hand, they take with the other. They say, we're not going to let big bad Washington hurt you because we want to do it. You're not their pawns, you're our pawns. That's what the state's basically saying. So no, I say to the state, restrict yourself. And by the way, this is my message to all officials of government. Restrict yourself, which the Constitution does. Hold yourself under the same required standards. Show me you have the balls and will actually stand up to the judicial tyrants and executive orders, and then maybe I'll believe you. Start impeaching, and removing judges who violate natural law and the will of the people. Remove leaders, butcher innocent babies, and call marriage something it is not. Then I'll actually maybe take you seriously, and I'll know that you're trying to make growth. It's kind of like, we're ready to believe you. I'm not ready to believe right now. You're gonna prove. Anyway, I'm not going to read the whole bill because I don't have time, and I don't think most of you would listen anyway. But I will leave you with the info if you want to study it further. It's Missouri 37. You can go to house.mo.gov and research the bill. That's house.mo.gov, House Bill 1637. Now, this bill was already heard before the House Committee on March 4th. Apparently, almost everyone and their mother is coming out of the woodwork to support this thing, and I just know it's going to be all for naught. It's like everything else that sounds good. The Republicans who control the state bury it in subcommittee after they collect their money for simply proposing it by, again, naive, often Christians and conservatives who say, well, he tried. He's sponsoring this great bill. I'm going to give him, never mind what the actual fruit of the bill is and what the turnout is. In fact, I'm reading it now. My friend and researcher, Nick Smeek, says that they passed around this bill committee after committee, and it has been stalled since March 11th. So, thanks, Nick. I'm right again. I was right. They're not going to do anything. They're going to just let it stall in committee. And then Nick says, who voted these idiots into office? They can't shoot the broadside of a barn. Probably true. So I've got a few questions from the audience. He says, hello, Ryan. My name is Mark. I'm from Jefferson City, Missouri. That's my hometown too, Mark. I was wondering how easy it would be for a bill to be edited before it becomes a law. How can you add more teeth to a bill like the bill here in Missouri that you just discussed? Well, Mark, I don't think it really needs any more teeth to it. I think the language in many of the sections is actually good. The problem is who they apply it to. They apply it to the federal government only. They don't hold themselves to the same standards, and they don't go after the St. Louis's and Kansas Cities that are, violating the Second Amendment. So I want every officer of government to simply follow their sworn oath and defend our Second Amendment rights. So that's my only problem with this bill. It's not that it's a bad bill on its face. It's just that they excuse themselves from having to follow the same standards, and that's what I see over and over again in these bills. There's always the child in the womb is a person. They start that with these pro-life bills, and then they turn around and say, but you can kill them if you're dressed in a certain outfit, or have enough money, or you're a doctor, or you're a mother, or, there's always these buts in all these bills. So we have another question from Zach in Nevada. He says, we already have a red flag law in our state. What would you suggest that we do to repeal the bill, and how can we convince our senators and representatives in the rural areas to stand up to the tyranny and repeal this egregious law? Zach, I also have to deal with this here in Florida. Our Republican-controlled state put into law a few years ago red flag laws, which basically say if a judge, again, a moronic, liberal, leftist, Russian-paid judge, says that you're mentally incapable, they get weapons. And 300 incidents, just in a couple years, they've actually done that. So how do you stop that? Well, first of all, every single person, you need to get guns right now. Whatever guns you don't have, you need to be buying now, because the gun stores, I've talked to a lot of them, simply cannot get guns. They're having trouble getting ammo, and they're up in arms because they're just totally bewildered. And so Trump, the supposed conservative, has actually done more damage to gun ownership probably than anybody. And it's almost impossible to get guns right now. I've been waiting 8 months to try to get a 12-gauge shotgun. So I'm going to tell you, Zach, and everyone listening, if you want guns, you need to go out and get them. And I would recommend a semi-automatic weapon of some sort, specifically either a 9mm or a shotgun, because those are self-defense weapons. Rifles are important for hunting, but they're not going to help you with self-defense unless you absolutely have to have them. So I recommend a 9mm semi-automatic or a 12-gauge semi-automatic shotgun, my personal preference. So that's the first thing. Make sure you're ready. Make sure you're armed, that when these red flag laws are become the clear violation they are, and they actually show up, you're guns, you're ready to stand. You've already made a resolve of what you're going to do. Let me just say that I believe it's the duty of every citizen of this country to defend our liberty. That, and if we can go, I want to know you're killing me, you're killing my wife, you're killing this country, you're killing people that would otherwise stand up for liberty. So thank you guys for your questions. 2 shows just in with, and they tell jokes and they have a good time. That's all they do. I'm doing this podcast because I really do want action to take place. I want you, the people, to actually be informed of what's going on, and I'm going to challenge you to actually do things, because otherwise, so I end with practical caution. You should call in to your rep and senator and question them regarding, as the case in Missouri, number 8 of section 1.410 of House Bill 1637. Ask them why the state is exempt from these regulations. Tell them you did not give them the authority listed here. Tell them you have no faith in a bill because they've shown no willingness to stand up and actually enforce the rights of the people and the will of the people. Then tell them that you and a great majority of Missourians voted to define marriage as the union between one man and one woman, and yet you, the governors, and every other authority in Missouri has chosen to do the whim of a few judges over the will of the people, and thus have violated your sworn oath of office. So tell them, until you protect innocent human life and marriage, I don't trust you to protect my right to defend myself. Now, I will pray for your conviction and courage to do what you must and what you swore before God and man to do. So this bill sounds great, sir or madam, but based on your prior record of enforcement and actual defense of liberty, it's mere lip service meant to trick me and others into sending you money and votes. I, sir or madam, will do neither, because you have not proven yourself. Until you prove yourself once again by telling judges, lawyers, and anyone else that is so clearly violating the Constitution, that's my rights, to go to hell. I don't believe it. If you actually act, the Constitution demands you to, in orders or other ordinance or coming from a corrupt official is null and void. So you're and defend me and the others you sworn to protect. Then I will be you. I'm sure this has been the Saturday Morning Paper Podcast. I want to thank Nicholas for finding these bills and providing the research for today's show. People don't realize how much goes into the show, and it takes probably time to research this. Research, I can create compelling news story in a podcast. It really takes someone doing that research. I don't care if you listen to Mark Lynn or Lynn Becker, they all have a vast research department. Well, here I just have one Nixon. So I want you to remember that you like this podcast and send donation. There's a lot of time and work that goes into this show, and need donations to keep us going. So part of those donations do go to my research part to get to lighting and better sound video equipment. So please go to patriotpulpit.org and click the link. Also like us on Facebook, Patriot Pulpit, and always use directly at 727-798-1101. That's 727-798-1101. All of goodwill are welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Bless you. Call those senators and representatives, and have a Christmas. Yes, I said it. Christ Mass. Enjoy every Saturday at pulpit.org for our next podcast. And you guys hang in there, and